Chapter 20 of the Riddle of the Sands. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Gesine. The Riddle of the Sands by Erskine Childers. Chapter 20. The Little Drab Book. I found Davies at the cabin table, surrounded with a litter of books. The shelf was empty, and its contents were tossed about among the cups and on the floor. We both spoke together. "Well, what was it?" "Well, what did she say?" I gave way, and told my story briefly. He listened in silence, drumming on the table with the book which he held. "It's not good-bye," he said. "But I don't wonder. Look here!" And he held out to me a small volume, whose appearance was quite familiar to me, if its contents were less so. As I noted in an early chapter, Davies's library, including tide tables, pilots, etc., was limited to two classes of books, those on naval warfare and those on his own hobby, cruising and small yachts. He had 6 or 7 of the latter, including Knight's Falcon in the Baltic, Cowper's Sailing Tours, Macmullen's Down Channel, and other less-known stories of adventurous travel. I had scarcely done more than look into some of them at off moments, for our life had left no leisure for reading. This particular volume was—no, I had better not describe it too fully, but I will say that it was old and unpretentious, bound in cheap cloth of a rather antiquated style, with a title which showed it to be a guide for yachtsmen to a certain British estuary. A white label, partly scratched away, bore the legend 3D. I had glanced at it once or twice, with no special interest. "Well?" I said, turning over some yellow pages. "Dollmann!" cried Davies. "Dollmann wrote it." I turned to the title page and read, "By Lieutenant X. R.N." The name itself conveyed nothing to me, but I began to understand. Davies went on, "The name's on the back, too, and I'm certain it's the last she looked at." "But how do you know?" "And there's the man himself. Ass that I am not to have seen it before. Look at the frontispiece." It was a sorry piece of illustration of the old-fashioned sort, lacking definition and finish, but effective notwithstanding, for it was evidently the reproduction, through a cheap and imperfect process, of a photograph. It represented a small yacht at anchor below some woods, with the owner standing on deck in his shirt-sleeves, a well-knit, powerful man, young, of middle height, clean-shaved. There appeared to be nothing remarkable about the face, the portrait being on too small a scale, and the expression, such as it was, being of the fixed photographic character. "How do you know him?" "You said he was 50, with a greyish beard." "By the shape of his head, that hasn't changed. Look how it widens at the top and then flattens, sort of wedge-shaped, with a high, steep forehead. You'd hardly notice it in that." The points were not very noticeable, but I saw what Davies meant. "The height and figure are right too, and the dates are about right. Look at the bottom." Underneath the picture was the name of a yacht and a date. The publisher's date on the title page was the same. "16 years ago," said Davies. "He looks 30 odd in that, doesn't he? And 50 now. Let's work the thing out. 16 years ago he was still an Englishman, an officer in Her Majesty's Navy. Now he's a German. At some time between this and then, I suppose, he came to grief. Disgrace, flight, exile. When did it happen?" "They've been here 3 years. Von Brüning said so." "It was long before that. She has talked German from a child. What's her age, do you think, 19 or 20? "About that." "Say she was 4 when this book was published. The crash must have come not long after. And they've been hiding in Germany since. Is this a well-known book? I never saw another copy. I picked this up in a second-hand bookstore for threepence. She looked at it, you say? Yes, I'm certain of it. Was she never on board you in September? No, I asked them both, but Dollmann made excuses. But he came on board. You told me so. Once he asked himself to breakfast on the first day. By Jove! Yes, you mean he saw the book? It explains a great deal. It explains everything. We fell into deep reflection for a minute or two. Do you really mean everything? I said. In that case, let's sail straight away and forget the whole affair. He's only some poor devil with a past, whose secret you stumbled on, and, half mad with fear, he tried to silence you. But you don't want revenge, so it's no business of ours. We can ruin him if we like, but is it worth it? You don't mean a word you're saying, said Davies, though I know why you say it, and many thanks, old chap. I didn't mean everything. He's plotting with Germans, or why did Grimm spy on us, and von Brüning cross-examine us? We've got to find out what he's at, as well as who he is. And as to her, what do you think of her now? I made my amende heartily. Innocent and ignorant, was my verdict. Ignorant, that is, of her father's treasonable machinations, but aware, clearly, that they were English refugees with a past to hide. I said other things, but they do not matter. Only, I concluded, it makes the dilemma infinitely worse. There's no dilemma at all, said Davies. You said at Bensersiel that we couldn't hurt him without hurting her. Well, all I can say is, we've got to. The time to cut and run, if ever, was when we sighted her dinghy. I had a baddish minute then. She's given us a clue or two after all. It wasn't our fault. To refuse to have her on board would have been to give our show away, and the very fact that she's given us clues decides the matter. She mustn't suffer for it. What will she do? Stick to her father, I suppose. And what shall we do? I don't know yet. How can I know? It depends, said Davies slowly. But the point is, we have two objects, equally important. Yes, equally, by Jove. To scotch him and save her. There was a pause. That's rather a large order, I observed. Do you realize that at this very moment we have probably gained the first object? If we went home now, walked into the Admiralty, and laid our facts before them, what would be the result? The Admiralty, said Davies, with ineffable scorn. Well, Scotland Yard then, too. Both of them want our man, I dare say. It would be strange if between them they couldn't dislodge him, and, incidentally, either discover what's going on here, or draw such attention to this bit of coast as to make further secrecy impossible. It's out of the question to let her betray her father and then run away. Besides, we don't know enough, and they mightn't believe us. It's a cowardly course, however you look at it. Oh, that settles it, I answered, hastily. Now I want to go back over the facts. When did you first see her? That first morning. She wasn't in the saloon the night before? No, and he didn't mention her. You would have gone away next morning if he hadn't called. Yes, I told you so. He allowed her to persuade you to make that voyage with them. I suppose so. But he sent her below when the pilotage was going on? Of course. She said just now, "Father said you would be safe." What had you been saying to her? It was when I met her on the sand. By the way, it wasn't a chance meeting. She had been making inquiries, and heard about us from a skipper who had seen the yacht near 101online.